I am Perseus, son of Zeus, king of the gods, and Danae, princess of Argos. My life began in darkness, with whispers of prophecy and doom. From the moment I drew breath, my existence was entangled with fate, for it was foretold that I would one day bring about the death of my grandfather, King Acrisius. It was this prophecy that shaped my early life, casting shadows over the innocence of youth and forging me into the hero I would become. My tale is one of divine intervention, deadly quests, and a destiny that led me across the heavens and to the very edge of death itself. My story began long before I was born. King Acrisius, fearing the prophecy that his grandson would one day be his doom, locked my mother, Danae, in a bronze tower, hoping to prevent any man from reaching her. But the gods cannot be thwarted by walls or iron. Zeus, in the form of a golden shower, descended upon my mother, and from their union I was conceived. When Acrisius discovered my birth, his fear turned to wrath. He could not bring himself to kill his own blood. Such a crime would bring the gods' curse upon him, but he could not allow me to live, either. And so, he placed my mother and me into a chest and cast us into the sea, leaving our fates to the mercy of the waves. But the gods were watching. Poseidon calmed the waters, and the chest drifted safely to the shores of Seriphos, where a kind fisherman named Dictys found us and took us in. He raised me as his own, and for many years I lived in peace, unaware of the destiny that awaited me. As I grew older, so too did the ambitions of King Polydectes, the ruler of Seriphos and brother of Dictys. Polydectes desired my mother and sought to force her into marriage. But I, young and proud, stood in his way. To rid himself of me, Polydectes devised a cunning plan. He pretended to desire the hand of another and declared that all men in his kingdom must bring him a wedding gift. When I had nothing to offer, Polydectes seized the opportunity to humiliate me. He demanded that I bring him the head of Medusa, one of the Gorgons, fearsome creatures with snakes for hair and a gaze that could turn any living thing to stone. It was a task meant to kill me, for no man had ever faced Medusa and survived. But I could not refuse. My honor and the safety of my mother depended on my success. I set out on my quest, knowing that I faced certain death without divine aid. The gods, however, had not forgotten me. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and Hermes, the messenger of the gods, came to my aid. Athena gave me a polished bronze shield, its surface like a mirror, and advised me to use it to see Medusa's reflection rather than look directly at her. Hermes gifted me an adamantine sword, sharp enough to cut through anything, and winged sandals that would allow me to fly. But even with these gifts, I needed more. To find Medusa's lair, I first had to seek out the Grii, three ancient sisters who shared a single eye and tooth among them. With Hermes by my side, I stole their eye as they passed it between themselves and demanded that they tell me the way to the Gorgon's lair. Reluctantly, they revealed the location and directed me to the Stygian nymphs, who provided me with more vital tools: a magical bag to safely carry Medusa's head and Hades' helm of invisibility, which would allow me to approach unseen. Armed with the gifts of the gods and the knowledge of the Grii, I flew on my winged sandals to the desolate island where the Gorgons lived. Medusa, the most terrible of the three sisters, was cursed by Athena for defiling her temple. Her beauty had been twisted into monstrous form, and her gaze could turn even the bravest warrior to stone. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal, but Medusa was not, and it was she I had been sent to kill. As I approached their lair, I used Athena's shield to guide my steps, looking only at Medusa's reflection in its polished surface. The Gorgons lay sleeping, their monstrous forms coiled among the stone statues of their previous victims. With great care, I crept toward Medusa, my heart pounding in my chest. When I was close enough, I raised Hermes' sword and, with a single swift stroke, severed her head. Her blood poured forth, and from it sprang two creatures, the winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor. But I had no time to marvel at this miracle, for Medusa's sisters awoke with cries of rage. Donning Hades' helm of invisibility, I fled before they could find me, clutching Medusa's head in the magical bag. I soared into the sky, leaving the island far behind. On my journey home, I passed through the land of Ethiopia, where I encountered a terrible sight. The Princess Andromeda, daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia, had been chained to a rock by the sea as a sacrifice to the sea monster Cetus. Cassiopeia had boasted that her beauty surpassed that of the Nereids, and in anger, the sea god Poseidon had sent Cetus to ravage the kingdom. To appease the god, the king and queen had offered their daughter to the beast. As I flew above the coast, I saw Andromeda in her dire plight, her beauty radiant even in the face of death. Without hesitation, I swooped down and struck a bargain with her parents. If I slew the monster, they would give me Andromeda's hand in marriage. With Medusa's head still in my possession, I descended to the shore and waited for Cetus to emerge from the depths. When the creature attacked, I fought it with all the strength I possessed, but its hide was thick and impenetrable. Finally, in a moment of desperation, I drew Medusa's head from the bag and held it aloft. The sea monster met her gaze and was instantly turned to stone, its massive form frozen forever in the surf. I freed Andromeda from her chains, and true to their word, her parents gave her to me in marriage. Together, we set off for Seriphos, my prize in hand and my heart filled with joy. When I returned to Seriphos, I found that Polydectes had grown even more tyrannical in my absence. He had harassed my mother, forcing her to seek refuge in the temple of Athena. Enraged, I went to the palace, where Polydectes and his court mocked me, refusing to believe that I had succeeded in my quest. Without a word, I drew Medusa's head from the bag and held it before them. One by one, Polydectes and his men turned to stone, their expressions of scorn forever frozen on their faces. With the tyrant dead, I made Dictys king of Seriphos, and my mother was finally free. With my mother safe and my new wife by my side, I decided to return to Argos to reconcile with my grandfather, King Acrisius. But the prophecy that had haunted my life could not be so easily avoided. Acrisius, still fearful of his fate, fled the city when he learned of my approach. Not long after, I participated in athletic games held in Larissa. During the discus throw, the wind caught my throw and sent it flying into the crowd. Unknowingly, I struck an old man who had come to watch the games. When I rushed to his side, I realized with horror that it was my grandfather, Acrisius. The prophecy had come true. Though I had no intention of harming him, it was my hand that caused his death. Grief-stricken, I refused to take the throne of Argos. Instead, I traded kingdoms with another king and ruled over Tiryns, where I founded the great city of Mycenae. My adventures did not end with the death of Acrisius. I continued to perform great deeds, always under the watchful eyes of the gods. My name became known across the lands, and poets sang of my exploits for generations to come. In the end, the gods rewarded me for my service to them. Upon my death, Zeus placed me among the stars, immortalizing my deeds in the constellation that still bears my name. My winged steed, Pegasus, also took his place in the heavens, a reminder of the bond we shared. I am Perseus, slayer of Medusa, rescuer of Andromeda, and founder of Mycenae. My life was shaped by prophecy, driven by the will of the gods, and marked by both triumph and tragedy. I fought monsters, defied tyrants, and outwitted the forces of fate. But in the end, I could not escape the destiny that was foretold before my birth. Yet, despite the shadows that loomed over my life, I am remembered not for the prophecy, but for the deeds I accomplished. My courage, my cunning, and my devotion to those I loved carried me through trials that no mortal should have survived. And though my time on earth has ended, my story lives on in the stars, a beacon of hope and heroism for all who gaze upon the night sky. This is my tale, the tale of Perseus, son of Zeus, hero of Greece, and immortal among the stars.